Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fastest, largest, and most active large-scale Scrum community uh, that is viral. Has gone viral since 2015, and it's now global. Today, we're going to talk about the topic that has probably been on minds of many, and it's going to be about PI planning. So this is not something that's specifically contextual to large-scale Scrum, but we shall address this entire topic from the standpoint of system modeling and system thinking, okay? So I kindly ask you, I'm the only person who monitors this event, so I'm kindly ask you to keep your cameras on if you can, and your mics off. Just keep yourself mute so that we, are respectful to each other and don't interrupt. Just give me a thumbs up if I'm audible and if you can see my screen. Perfect. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kick off by making a confession that while preparing for this session, I did a bit of my own research, browsed the web, did lots of searching, used ChatGPT, used other ways of sourcing data, and also talked to some of the colleagues of mine that have been around, around various companies that have experienced the same. So I would like us to pay attention to the following five, which seems to be chief complaints that people have with PI planning. And I'm just going to read them off to you. These are not the only ones, but these are the five that I have come across. I essentially put them here on the canvas. And I do try to figure out what's the best way to mute others because people join on mute. All right, so just please be kind to others and mute yourselves upon entry. So the first concern that I've heard quite a bit is insufficient preparation, organizational cadence pressure, lack of backup readiness, and unclear roles that contribute to poor planning readiness. The second concern that I have come across was ineffective dependency management, which causes a ripple effect of unmanaged cross-team dependencies and asynchronous coordination overhead. The third concern I would like to look into is misalignment with business goals, drift from strategic intent, and lack of alignment across levels. The fourth concern is overcommitment during planning, systemic root causes behind unrealistic commitments. And the fifth, but not least but not last, is lack of clear definition of done, essentially inconsistency of definition of done definitions, it's a bit of redundant, and degradation of quality, predictability, and trust. So what I have done, I tried to break these chief complaints into top three system variables for each complaint. And those of you that may not be familiar with the system modeling as the very powerful coaching tool, I'm going to probably introduce you very quickly to it. You take some of these, we call them system variables. Essentially, these are elements of your large ecosystemic, your large ecosystem, your complex system, and you turn them into sticky notes or post-it notes or things that you can either upgrade or downgrade, increase or decrease. So essentially, there was a ways
It's
to.
on the FC 102.
Yep, David, we need to mute you. I'm sorry. All right. So the number of teams private in brackets, you have technical backlogs. Essentially, this is the variable I'm going to explore. How many teams private technical backlogs, not true product backlogs, teams private unique to a single team backlogs. Number of special roles on and around teams. Number of fake team level product owners. These are the three variables I'm going to use to describe the insufficient preparation concern. The next three variables are going to be strength of strength of private code practices, those instances where we hear, hey, don't touch, this is my code. Degree of code, degree of cross-functionality, full stack capabilities of each team. Number of dedicated dependency managers and coordinators, people that are actually not true performing and delivering team members, but rather people in a managerial capacity. For the third concern, for the third complaint, misalignment with business goals, I have identified the following three system variables: number of organizational levels that influence product development, clarity of product definition, degree of product centricity in a backlog. Actually, it should be singular, not plural, so I'm going to change it in a backlog, because when we talk about a product, there should be only one and only one product backlog. The fourth system variable, I'm sorry, the fourth complaint gets decomposed into the following variables: effectiveness of estimation techniques by multiple teams, essentially working together, reliability of historical data produced by multiple teams, and the third variable here would be pressure to deliver. And the last chief complaint is about definition of done. And the three system variables that are related to it are as follows: maturity of definition of done itself, breadth of shared definition of done across multiple teams, and size of what's called an undone department. And I don't have a better way to describe undone department other than by saying anything that prevents us to go to production after our sprint end. It's essentially considered to be as an undone work. Undone work is something that we cannot finish as a team by definition, either because we lack skills or we're not allowed by our company, by organization, due to some internal corporate policies. So this is like a hard block, undone department. Okay, so these are the system variables that I chose to spin off of these 5 complaints, and I'm going to try to walk us through this system model that I have built out here. And by the way, as I'm sure you know, that a system model is something that's best to be created not just by a single person, but in a group of X number of people, usually like 4 to 6 people working together on a whiteboard in the room, or maybe on a mirror board, on a mural board, on the lucid board. You know, it's a co-creation exercise where you expose problems together and try to solve those problems together. Okay, so there are so many different ways we can walk through this system. There's no right or wrong way to start. In fact, this is just a small part of the system, because if we keep thinking and talking and expanding it, this may produce many other variables. So, but you know, I have to choose somewhere, so I chose to start with this specific system variable that is essentially seems to be, so it's about whether or not we need to have PI planning and why this need exists. So I turn it into a system variable, and as you can see, any sticky note here can be turned up or down. So any word that precedes the rest of the label is essentially can be increased or decreased. Degree can be high or lower. Pressure can be high or low. Ability could be high or low. Need could be high or low. So here's a need to rely on long-term planning, PI planning. So what are the things that potentially may impact it within the system? And by the way, as I was transposing these 15 identified variables and putting them within this in the system, I added some additional call them glue variables, some additional things that I have discovered throughout this exercise, things that would be actually necessary to make the dialogue, the conversation more fluid, easier. So we can actually, once I'm done with my part of the discussion, we can open up for questions and comments. So so minus stands for negative causation, plus stands for positive causation. As far as the annotation goes, for those of you that are not familiar with it, instead of a minus, you sometimes can put a little O, which stands for an opposite, in which case then instead of a plus, you just put nothing. It assumes that it's positive. Okay. So ability to forecast long-term delivery based on incremental delivery. And I'm putting a little star here because it's a very critical variable. I'm going to explain to you later why it is critical. So if this ability is high, so in other words, we are able to base our long-term delivery forecasting based on incremental delivery, because we're doing really well incrementally, then the whole need of planning long-term as a big bang, as so many people together, this need is going to go down. So this is a very good way to ensure that the need is low. And arguably we may say the opposite is true too. If we are not unable to deliver to derive any sort of forecast, long-term forecasting from our incremental delivery, if we're unable to do so, then the need for long-term planning to give this sense of insurance that we are going to deliver this is going to be higher. So it's a psychological dependency, if you will. If we have no reliable data to base our long-term forecasting on, then we're going to have to come up with something. So this is just kind of getting over the hump because it should be easier once you understand the logic. We're kind of going backwards from the need of doing PI planning. If we go backwards, we can understand some more stuff quicker. So this ability to do long-term planning, what is it dependent on? What has causation on it? Well, ability to forecast incremental delivery reliably is a good way to ensure that your long-term delivery is also accurate or reliable. So ability to forecast incremental delivery reliably sits upstream. Upstream means before this variable and has causation on it. You can also say that effectiveness of estimation techniques, if effectiveness is high, then ability is high as well. You may also argue that if reliability of historical data produced by many teams is high, in other words, things are reliable. You can also then say that ability to forecast long-term would be higher. System gamification. System gamification means we're making up these numbers or fudging them or padding them in some way. If we gamify the system a lot, if this is a high variable, then it's going to have a negative causation on the ability to do long-term forecasting. What usually leads to system gamification? There's a positive, there's a plus sign. It's a pressure to deliver. When we have too much pressure on people, on developers to deliver, they tend to come up with interesting ways to produce good results, good numbers, right? If we work backwards from it, we can actually see another interesting variable, number of dedicated dependency managers and coordinators. So, these are the people that usually are not necessarily hands-on producers, but people that are responsible for delivery, and we call them whip leashers, right? They are about and around teams, and they make sure that things get done, presumably, as if there is no way to self-manage. We need to increase the pressure of management. Now, these three variables side by side, I'm just going to read them off to you, is the result of something else. The number of dedicated dependency managers, the number of fake team-level product owners, not real product owners, people that are being relabeled into product owners, and the number of special roles and on and around teams. All these three system variables will be high if in general we have the overall number of leftover people, roles, trying to stay busy in the system high. So this essentially is a much more systemic, much more upstream organizational problem, okay? And if we trace it all the way down through this arrow, we're going to look at this system variable, adherence to traditional org design. So organizational design, if it stays as is, unchangeable, impeccable, then of course this will lead to too many people in the system. While here, I'm going to actually use it to work outward. Number of organizational levels that influence product development. Unequivocally, if the org structure remains as is, the number of org levels will remain as is. So if adherence is high, the number of org levels is going to be high. And therefore, the size of undone department may also grow. What's an undone department? Those are the areas, teams, departments, structures, organizational structures that sit in between um, developers, product developers that are actually on teams, and your production. So in other words, anywhere, anyone or anything that sits in between essentially is undone. And the bigger your org structure, the more complex your organization, the higher chance you're going to have people with traditional roles, traditional responsibilities, traditional space that they control that will say, you know what? No, you're not the one who deploys to production. We do. We are DevOps. We're DevSecOps. We're SecDevOps. You name it. So these are actually not developers that work in sprints. These are people that actually sit in between Scrum, if you use just bare bones Scrum and production deployment. Now, this size of undone department, if it's high, if it's big, then it's lo and behold, this is very almost not probabilistic. This is definitional. Strength of private code policies is going to be very high. This is my code. This is my code base. This is my region. This is my environment. Don't touch it. And if this leads, this increases strength of private code policies, then the number of teams with private technical backlogs is also going to grow. There is one variable that sits in between here, and it's named degree of cross-functionality of teams, as in being a full stack team, made up of full stack developers. So as you can see, degree of cross-functionality is going to have a negative causation on all of these three variables. Fewer private backlogs, fewer strength, lowering strength in private code policies, and smaller size of an undone department, maybe even bringing it to null, to nothing. So degree of cross-functionality here is very critical. Of course, this is also going to have a positive causation on maturity of the definition of done per individual team. And therefore, breadth of shared definition of done across multiple teams. Now you may ask, perhaps you may ask yourself, why do we care about multiple teams, more than one team having a shared definition of done, the lowest common denominator? What that would be a natural, I mean, though it's a fair question, but the natural answer would be if they work on the same product, true product, then this would be something that they need to have. If they work on different chunks of a product, different components, different applications, different parts of the platform, then of course this requirement becomes weak, becomes unnecessary, because each one of the teams has its own marching order, has its own priority, has its own most likely team level fake product owner, who is really not a product owner, more like a team output owner, or like a local technical lead or a BA. So of course, shared definition of done is a very good litmus test of whether or not these teams work synergetically on the same product. So where were we here? So the breadth of a shared definition of done across all teams, if we trace it, it has a positive causation on the ability to deliver a broad, a wide, an extensive PSPI at the end of each sprint. And PSPI stands obviously for potentially shippable product increment, something that would be product centric and customer focused, not a technical chunk of code, not a technical deliverable, a true PSPI. I'm going to add one word here, sizable. Why? Because if multiple teams work together in synergy on the same product, out of the same product backlog for the same product owner on the same product, we're talking about very significant manpower, 35, 45, maybe up to 50 developers. That's a lot. So the PSPI, which will be much bigger, more inclusive. Let's take a quick look. What else impacts ability to deliver PSPI? Size of undone department. This actually has to be a minus, so I'm going to add it on the fly. So if your size of undone department, if the size of an undone department is high, then the ability to deliver PSPI is going to be low. Why? Because you come to the end of the sprint and nothing is potentially shippable, because you have to go through multiple iterations and multiple steps by other people, by other teams, by other departments that control something in order to get something to production. Okay, so this is a very strong. That's why some of these areas are very thick, very strong negative causation. For whatever it's worth, I'm going to trace this error also to the ability to deliver a sizable PSPI. Degree of cross functionality of all of the teams. So if this is high, if the degree is high, then lo and behold, ability to deliver a sizable PSPI is going to be also higher. So ability to deliver a sizable PSPI, a good, good potentially shippable product increment is very important. It's like, if nothing else, this is it. And of course, if this is high, if this ability is high, if we are able to deliver a good PSPI, a good size PSPI at the end of every sprint, then of course, what is going to decrease is the need for longer term planning. Why? Because we don't feed our users and customers with IOUs. We don't give them promissory notes by saying, well, in this sprint, we haven't really delivered anything substantial, anything customer centric, but we promise to you in a few sprints when we fully integrate with other teams that work out of their private backlogs, then we're going to have something substantial for you. When every time there is a lack of incremental deliverable, there is concern, there is pressure, and there is anxiety by consumers, customers, and users that there may not be enough or maybe nothing as promised when promised. And therefore, psychologically, people go into these additional motions of, hey, through these additional motions, hey, let's make sure we plan. Let's make sure we're more precise. Let's make sure we, write things out so that nothing falls through cracks, so we have something on paper, so we have a marching order. But in all fairness, if you deliver incrementally, PSPI gets delivered every sprint. And if you are able to do this incrementally here also, there's a bit of a redundancy in these sticky notes, which, by the way, as you go through the system model, you can shrink the number of variables. But essentially, they point to the same idea. If there is more predictability, if there is more consistency in incremental delivery, it is going to be much easier. It would be much easier to forecast longer term. And it's going to be a very cheap exercise, very easy exercise. Then if so, the need to create promissory notes and spend lots of time and energy in these long, bombastic planning, the need is going to be lower. Of course, needs to keep people busy. There is another variable. Need to keep need of additional activities to keep people busy. When you have too many people in the system, in the organizational system that wants to stay busy, naturally will lead to the increased need of having these extraordinary, sometimes not really much value add events. And of course, this variable is highly dependent on the number of special roles around the teams and on the teams, which is the result of the overall leftover roles, which is essentially the result of traditional organizational structure not being changed. So not in so many words, if I were to sum this up, if we don't change the systemic root cause of this, downstream issue, we may not be really solving this issue. We'll be just sort of like peppering it with superficial changes. If you have too many people within the organization and everyone wants to stay engaged and involved, and you're not rethinking who you really need, who you really don't need anymore for true product-centric development, then of course you're going to go through these motions of adding activities and events and meetings, whichever you want to call them, to create an illusion of solving complexity, because you have this complexity introduced in the first place. Okay, so what could be better ways to handle this? So first of all, I wanted to say this: instead of bashing the PI planning and saying this is a bad thing, automatically it's a bad thing, we need to understand that this is the almost like a necessary evil. Sometimes you have to do it because you lack predictability. You lack predictability because you do not deliver incrementally. And if you have nothing to prove that you are able to deliver, you're going to naturally end up giving these promissory notes and going through these detailed long-term planning exercises because no one is going to take nothing as an answer. You have to give something. And of course, if you have unlimited, uncontrolled number of people that want to stay busy, something that we really have to address. There's a difference between job security and role security, right? We have too many people with redundant, unnecessary roles that there is much higher, there is a higher risk that you're going to go through these unnecessary events. Sometimes people even see selfish benefit in having complexity because then there's something to resolve, then there's something to solve. And of course, we need to pay much more attention to how we structure our teams, how we structure our backlogs, and how we align our backlogs and one backlog per product with a product owner. So we need to make sure we properly choose, properly elevate and empower those people that are in charge of product development and product prioritization and product management. Okay, so instead of just bashing, we need to first understand these systemic root causes, why it's being why it happens, and maybe do some potential improvements to it. Maybe step away from the traditional org design that would be otherwise considered, hey, untouchable, don't touch it. Org design is something you cannot come close to. This is a sacred thing. It's linked to HR norms and policies. It's linked to our org chart. It's linked to things that are almost politically flammable, so don't touch them. Sure, if we live by it, then of course we're going to be sub-optimizing some other things in the system. So we all collectively have to understand some of these traditional legacy structures are not supportive of modern ways of working. And if today AI has only maybe indirect, maybe secondary or tertiary influence on organizational design, I mean, really, humans still should control what they do. AI works for us. Who knows what's going to happen in 10, 15 years? So we need to prepare for our org design to be much more resistant and resilient to some potentially even adverse effects for individuals' roles caused by AI. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Then revisiting product definition and probably widening this aspect, widening our product definition, not keeping it narrow. This is actually one of the reasons why each team works at a small piece and a small chunk of a product, because we don't have a really well-defined product definition. We have these many different so-called fake product owners managing degree of output of each one of those single teams with single private local optimized backlog. And we really don't work for the overarching systemic goal of improving and delivering front to back whole product. Of course, building our org around a product itself, not the other way around, would be very, very important. So in other words, don't tell your product what it should look like based on how you have traditionally structured your org. Instead, properly define your product and minimalistically choose only those people and teams, therefore teams, that are specifically required for this product to be developed, to be delivered in the most lean and effective way. Discontinue a product per team, per product owner relationship. This is it's complete nonsense. It just leads to local optimization by single function specialty. Most likely it's technical work. It's not product centric work. These are not true product owners. And therefore, of course, because no one actually works front to back and delivers true customer centric value, you are going to have to need a PI planning and alike large events. And of course, broaden your shared by multiple teams definition of done, as we call it, the lowest common denominator. So multiple teams can actually work out of the same product backlog on the same product for the same product owner. I may sound like almost like a broken record, but we need to repeat this again and again and again. you have multiple teams working together on the same mission, vision, strategic goals, and OKRs. Those are terms that we like using. They need to have a shared foundation, shared common denominator. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of horses. Instead of pulling the horse carriage in the same direction, these horses will be chaotically trying to compete with each other and beat each other to the punch. Okay. So those are just five potential improvements. There could be more. And the reason why we do system modeling, I think this very famous Greek scientist, philosopher, Archimedes, he actually, I think, understood the system modeling pretty well. That's just my guess. That's his quote. He wanted he wanted a pole and a lever where he could put this pole. He said he could move the Earth. And the reason why I'm using this analogy with system modeling is because when we look at a large model, we can actually ask this question: why the heck are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Well, we want to improve the system, but we want to improve the system in a smart way. We do not want to go to peripheral manifestations of a problem, to symptoms, and try to pepper them, try to fix them. That would be inefficient. We want to look for systemic root causes. We want to look for those very powerful internal changes that we can make with a relatively small, relatively low energy. So we're looking for levers. We're looking for the lever that Archimedes had too. And perhaps this means we need to go all the way upstream to see what has been causing this need to be high. Don't keep just saying people don't do the PI. That's just silly, because most likely this PI is solving a real problem that has been created in the system, but we're not changing the problem. We're not fixing the problem. So we shouldn't be whining about having a PI that's costly, ineffective, and all of those chief complaints that we see at the top. That's just not smart, not logical. We need to understand what's causing this. And maybe we can look at the org structure. We can look at the team's ability to deliver a true PSPI at the end of every sprint. We can take a look at degree of product centricity in our backlog. We can look at other things. So these stars actually indicate where you may potentially, put some pressure, try to improve things, and see a cascading causation through the system to come to a point where you're going to say naturally, you know what, naturally, organically, we may not need a PI because we got things covered. So I'm going to be quiet now for a minute. Maybe someone wants to reflect or chime in or ask questions. You can just unmute and yell out, or just raise a hand, either way. Sunny and Glenn, I don't see a particular order here, but Sunny, go on. Just speak to the
Hi,
mic.
Glenn. Hi, Glenn. Could you just clarify what do those arrow breaks mean? So you have those two horizontal lines on the arrow
Oh,
coming from
yeah, I didn't.
gamification.
I didn't do a very good job explaining the semantics, because sometimes I assume, hey, people probably know what system modeling is by now. A double pipe means it's a delayed effect. That's it, pure. This is a it's a convention essentially.
Okay.
It's so in other words, when we game the system over time, not immediately, but over time, because double pipe means delayed with over time, we're going to have a negative causation on the need to rely on long-term planning. So in other words, I'm sorry, it's a good catch. System gamification is going to have a big plus there. So you were pointing out one thing and I noticed another. I copy pasted wrong. So if we game the system
All
with
right.
numbers, most likely, very quickly, we're going to catch on to this, and someone's going to catch on and say, you know what, these numbers are completely off of the radar. They're off the mark. We're going to do better long-term planning. And off you go now. Next thing, everyone is locked in the room, and we're doing this.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So thank you for the question. And by the way, I'm Gene. Glenn is the one who is going to be speaking next. Glenn.
Hey, Gene.
Hey.
I I think you're doing some excellent work here, but I submit, and maybe this is something we can't handle in the meeting here. But I think there's something that could be added here, and that is the degree of cross-functionality on the team. As you dial that up, I think an awful lot of these things go away.
I'm sorry, Glenn. So first of all, could you just rephrase it? So I'm zooming in on the system variable that's called degree of cross functionality. Could you please repeat your statement one more time? I think it was a statement, not a question. Yeah.
It seems like as you drive, I think that needs to be, I missed that you had it there. I think that that's stronger than you're representing, but this might be a big discussion. It feels like as you dial up cross functionality and you dial up highest customer value, prioritizing the highest customer value in incremental deliveries, I think a lot of stuff goes away for free, but that might be a big discussion.
So if hopefully I understand your question and your comment, and if not, feel free to correct me. The degree of cross functionality here. So if, in other words, what you're saying, if we really handle this well, if we turn up the dial on the degree, then some of these other variables that essentially illustrate and explain the same may become trivial and need to go away. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but cross functionality writ large. So the undone department, if there's something undone, boom, we're bringing somebody in. Undone has to be zero. And even things like finance, if we have finance is a huge problem, fine, bring somebody from finance on the team, at least part-time, so that discipline can be respected in whatever organization structure you're following. But the number one objective is delivery and via cross-functionality.
So I guess in your statement, I'm not hearing anything that I don't agree with. So even finance, like you mentioned the word finance. So if ability to be involved in finance and budgeting, the closer it is to Gamba, the closer it is to actual teams, the better. Hopefully, is that?
I'm saying something even stronger. If finance is getting funding is a problem, then you talk to finance, say, hey, we need you on the team. We want you to be successful, and you want us to be successful. So we're working cross-functional. HR, legal, deployment, like you name it.
So those are all true statements. So in other words, if the question is why isn't it explicitly on the model, then maybe because what I mentioned from the beginning, this model could be expanded and made much wider, almost indefinitely. Those system variables need to come in. But if you're just saying those functions need to be closer to the teams, if not on the teams, ideally, and in the perfect world, I would agree with you. So in other words, when you say HR and budgeting and legal, those are, by the way, very important organizational dimensions of everything we do here with product development. Are you saying anything else that maybe I'm missing?
And maybe the problem is more organizational, but if everybody was committed to a high level objective and all departments agreed with that, then cross functionality, which does include, maybe here's another thing, it does include direct communication, not having to go up the hierarchy. But I need finance. Who's my finance guy? On the team, you talk directly to them. You don't have to go through the organizational hierarchy. But yeah, I think this is exploding a bit into a bigger question. And yes, I think it changes the model. But
so, well, just as a disclaimer, this is a very tiny piece of the model. So I don't want to be digressing and like cross-selling the idea of that would be actually not my goal for today.
Yeah.
Cross-selling the idea of ecosystemic size, large organizational system model that we do, let's say in large-scale Scrum training. There are dedicated exercises that we run on finance on the finance aspect of it, on the HR norms and policies aspect of it, and sometimes it's often needed to actually go into the legal procurement and site strategies aspect of it. So those are very important dimensions of this bigger discussion, which of course we're not having today because that would take us probably 24 hours at least, because that's what less training is, probably more than that. But yeah, I'm totally on board with the notion that HR, legal, budgeting, and finance, those are very strong levers. That actually we call them organizational enablers. In fact, if this helps at all, I'm just gonna steal 10 more seconds from myself and we'll take someone else's question. Just to prove your own point. So and again, let's not think about large scale Scrum. Let's talk about HR. Let's talk about budgeting. Those are very strong levers of organizational design that would be very consistent with what I am trying to show here implicitly. This conversation isn't about less, as you can see. I haven't really said the word less even once. We're trying to address the need of maybe the need of not having the need to have a PI. But implicitly, we can talk about stuff that we actually teach. Anyway, I appreciate your question. I wanted to see maybe someone else wanted to.
Yeah. Let me I could go on, but yeah, let me give someone else.
Yeah, I'm happy I'm happy we can have a conversation, you and I separately if you would like. I'm very open to this. I would like to learn too. Anyone else wants to
Hey Jane, this is Chetan speaking. Like previously, you were explaining the color notepads like potential improvement and those things. So before potential improvement, there was some yellow color notepad and you were talking something, but the slide went too fast. Can you just talk in a brief about that particular yellow notepad?
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna scroll around real
Before
quick.
potential improvement, like step away from design. No, not from this particular Miro chart, but there was a sticky notepad, right? Yellow color, orange color you have
Upstairs,
kept.
up
Toward the
here.
bottom.
No, no, not this one. Still down after
Toward the
this
bottom.
one.
Oh, I'm sorry. This
Yeah,
one?
let's not bash PI kind of thing. So basically, my question was like, if you say कि PI has the pros and the cons at the same time, so how does the system modeling helps in that? I believe system modeling means like basically you have a big picture and try to break down the systems, processes, components, and the parts of that. So how does the system modeling work into this if you want to correct the PI then?
So the system modeling as a powerful to me coaching tool or facilitation tool. The way it works is that it gets us in the conversation that makes us all, whoever is involved. Usually we recommend limiting to maybe 4 to 6, 5, 4, 6, maybe fewer people. It helps us co-create the system and explore it in various ways so we can better understand it. So the system model itself becomes almost like a meaningful waste once we complete it. It's just a piece of paper with a bunch of stickers on it. But what comes out of it is the learning. And maybe an aha moment. Hey, we are dealing with this problem. And it doesn't have to be a PI planning overhead, which, that's the chief complaint here. You can see it's an overhead that doesn't add much value to so many teams. Maybe it could be something else. But what can we do to solve it? So instead of keep saying to a developer, work harder, work more efficiently, more effectively, become cross-functional, yada yada. Instead of bragging about this to a developer, whining to a developer, maybe we need to understand why a developer isn't doing all of that. And systemically, we can discover these patterns, these reasons, by looking at these upstream causations. Oh, maybe he or she are not, treated right, or not paid enough, or didn't get enough promotion, or have a lot of competition, or have a condescending and overly demanding manager. So instead of treating a symptom, we're going to go and look for the cause, for the actual disease, for the problem. So that's what system models help us do. And during runtime, this may start moving. And to Glenn's point, some of these sticky notes could be simplified, reduced. Errors could be simplified, reduced, minimized. We always look for those very thick. No one ever really asked. A thick error means actually a very strong causation, like very strong, very highly pronounced. A thinner error, or just an average size, means okay, there's a causation, but it's not overly critical. We always want to look for those thick errors, or we write them, we paint them on the canvas, and then we validate whether or not this is a true statement. If this is a very strong cause and effect relationship, then we say, okay, what can we do to trace this error backwards and maybe fix that problem? And we can, of course, we can simplify the system a lot by removing some of these errors, maybe finding shorter cuts. So this is just the first stab at the system by myself. So I've been preparing for this, and of course I've leveraged some other past work and discussions, but this could become the first iteration, the first version, and we can come up with more stuff, more useful stuff.
And what is the plus and minus sign about? If you can
As I
say it.
mentioned, it's one of the ways to annotate your errors. Minus means a negative causation or opposite causation, and a plus means positive causation. Or another way of doing this, if you're familiar with some other annotations like O stands for an opposite instead of a plus, and instead of a minus, you just write nothing. I'm sorry, O stands for a minus, which is an opposite, and nothing stands for a plus. So I could essentially remove this and it would still be positive. And instead of a minus, I could say this is an O. I can say it's an O instead of a minus, okay? Pure
Okay,
annotation, just it's the figure of speech, if you will. Any other questions here, folks? We got maybe another 10 minutes to yes, I now started reading the comments, Martin. Thank you. If you Google causal loop diagrams, is going to tremendously help. If you want to have a shortcut, you can go to my site, and under the resources under system thinking, I have a ton of articles and videos. So let me just paste it here for you. Okay, so you can pick it up from there and work your way out to I want to send it to everyone, not just one person. Anyone else wants to comment? I bet that some folks here actually have done maybe effectively so, PI planning. So feel free to challenge, feel free to say what you want. Maybe you had some great experience and maybe you haven't faced some of these. Again, these come from wide sourcing, querying the space. Martin, I would like to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the
Yeah.
You in the car? I know, I can see, but you're breaking up a little.
it's nice.
You're breaking up.
Oh, apologies. I'll do my best to speak close to the mic.
Maybe you want to kill a video for now. Just increase your bandwidth, improve your bandwidth a little.
Thanks. Would this work a bit better? Or you still cannot hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, ask. I'll try to rephrase.
One statement which comes to mind based on your last explanation was we model to have a conversation. And what I do notice in all the variables, how you phrased them, and while not mentioning less, of course, based on your background, there's a lot of less thinking in the way the model is set up. And I believe, I'm convinced that if there would be some folks from big banks, for example, involved in the conversation, the discussion you have here on this Miro board might fill 3 days of alignment because there are different views coming to the table. And I think this is the really useful added value of getting alignment around relations between those variables and stuff. So
I very much appreciate what you're
I think
saying, Martin. Thank you for this. In fact, I made I consciously, this is not an unconscious, this is a conscious effort not to use less terminology. In fact, these days, every time we talk about a framework, even though it's not it's an organizational design system more than a framework, still people have this cringe-worthy feeling, oh, it's another framework. These days, it's almost like it's a curse word when you talk about scaling and agile. So you got to be very careful. I have to be very careful how I carve my words. But you're absolutely right. Some of this is so much common sense. We don't need to put a label on and say this is right or this is good because it's an XYZ. Let's just model a conversation. This isn't to say this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is just to point out, hey, aren't these problems that you see and you agree with? If the answer is no, we move on. If you don't think, you agree with some of these statements, a product backlog shouldn't be product centric, or it's okay to have 25 different product backlogs for the same product. If those are the statements that come from other people, then obviously they will find a different solution to this. But yeah, the whole idea of having a model is to model a conversation. And if people work for the same organization, I would expect them to have some consistent understanding and consistent views, which makes this exercise even more powerful because now you can co-create and then look for ways to improve your organization.
yeah.
So thank you for this comment. Yeah, it's a conscious, for banks especially, you don't want to walk into a bank today and try to sell them another framework. They already 99.99999%, they're already unpacked and installed with some digital tool as a golden partnership, the XYZ framework that we all know, and they are successfully paying millions and millions and millions of dollars for it. So trying to sell them something else will just rub off the wrong way. We got to use some other way of, teaching them. And that's got to be, it has to be an implicit way, common sense way, where they
Glenn,
know you can see
I
the problem. Yeah,
Yeah, I have one question, Jane, if it is okay with you.
please.
Like this webinar presentation was very good, but I was wondering in future if you can take another presentation like, okay, PI planning has quite a few flaws and this everything. So how can we use LESS, less framework, and what is the comparison to PI planning from SafeSL? Like if a company wants to implement
I,
LESS, less
I
framework, so how can we use it instead of PI planning, and what is the comparison for that?
practically speaking, I cannot answer this question in less than 20 hours. But in short, I will say, let's not try to fix this, presumably an issue, a problem, or at least a necessary problem, a necessary evil, call it. Let's not fix it with another fad or another idea of a framework. It just won't rub the right way. We have to understand systemic root causes that sit behind these problems and fix those systemic root causes implicitly. So don't say, oh, we're gonna fix this with less. At least I don't want to do it. If you want to try it, come into to your organization, to your client or your employer and say, I think I have a solution for you and it's in the last box. If you want to do that, fine. I'm not going to stop you, but I wouldn't do it. I would actually do something like this. And only later down the road, if someone says, is there a way to conceptualize this and give it a name, then say, well, it has a name. I just didn't have to use a name. Don't try to fix something because you have another shiny name or shiny coin. They just might take. But other than that, it will take hours and hours for us to discuss how to do it differently.
Okay.
Consider these improvements. Now, how to do this may require hours and hours of discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. And we are, we almost at the hour. I don't even know what it means when my AI is still blinking there. And I know what recording means. Maybe this whole entire thing will get transcribed. I have no idea. And then we'll summarize it, yeah. So folks, anyone else, if no one else, feel free to reach out for, I will try to zap it into some sort of a useful reference, the few graphics, and I'll do the needed to distribute. But if you have any specific questions that are relevant to your unique case, especially if you are underway with the effort of improving things or changing or adopting something new and unique and different, uh, give me a shout. We'll see. We can maybe apply some of this. Let's not call it last thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only say from my perspective that that the XYZ framework can be removed from banking.
The
We're
what? The
talking
what?
about the XYZ framework we are talking about, or we do not talk about,
Okay.
can be removed from banking.
I'm going to be
I'm just
extremely careful. I'm going to extremely careful, just because it's going to be too self-serving. But if we're here and then there and there and then there, we can probably recover. There are some ways to do it, but you said it, not me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just telling from the
Let's talk
experience of the
common sense.
organization who did that, which did
We
that.
have
Yeah.
to talk common sense. You
Yeah.
you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. If a large organization, if a large bank decided to invest so much money into something that is clearly not having enough ROI, and they better do the check, do the math, then something is extremely wrong with the governance, with the oversight, and with the senior executive management of those people that are actually responsible. They have to have some sort of a fiduciary responsibility, don't they? So we're not naming any names, luckily so.
There's a great quote that might be relevant here. It's very hard to explain something to somebody whose job depends on not
I'm
doing
not doing it. Thank you very much. Upton Sinclair, my favorite one, Glenn. Thank you so much. Yep, you stole my thunder. But this is,
Sorry, man.
I use it to left, right, and center all the time.
Yep, and that's absolutely what's going on in a lot of these organizations. The hierarchy wants to maintain itself because it doesn't want to go bankrupt or be laid off.
The thing is, the minute we find real customers, so this is why in my not so fancy, I'm just gonna spend another minute since Glenn really got me excited with his statement. So lately I realized for myself that we need to go to business, to profit centers to make sense. Cost centers will be much more reluctant to change for better because they operate exactly as per Upton Sinclair's quote. It's hard to make them understand something where their salaries depend on not understanding it, and they're not the ones that pay for it. So you have to go to those that actually, take out a wallet and pay for it. So in my experience, much of what we say here resonates much stronger with those that actually pay for the show. No one wants to pay for the circus. People just can't really tell what a circus is. They had challenges separating good stuff from from agile theater, as we call it. So anyway, on the recording, we're gonna have a bunch of stuff that is probably not directly related to the topic, so we can always take this offline. I thank you all for joining, and I'll try to do my best to furnish this asset to you in the next day or two. You have
I
a
just
great
had
Memorial
one.
Day if you celebrate it, if you're in the States or elsewhere in Europe. I think they celebrate it too. And we have a great event coming up, by the way. So this is not selfish. It's not a self serving statement. It's more of a, let me just go back. Something with my, come on. Hold on, let me
And will you be sharing this Miro diagram and the
I will
recording
be
as well?
sharing its content in some way. Yeah, I can't. For some reason, my internet just got stuck. Okay, here we go. We have a great talk by this gentleman. His name is Double Punchhole. He's from Texas. Generative versus perspective, comparing agile scaling frameworks. Hey, so I didn't catch your name. You code yourself a CS, but if you actually want to hear about some pros and cons, come to Davos. He actually is a very experienced guy. I'll stand by what he has to say. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you very much. And this is next in the next few weeks. You can check the calendar.
Hey, Gene. I'd like to continue the discussion that I started if you have the time, or let's schedule something.
Oh, drop me a note. I'll be happy to, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay, can you do it now?
Let's ping me. Maybe we can find time today. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to.
Okay.
I have some downtime today. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. While
Yeah,
you're
thank
here,
you, Gene. Thank you, guys.
Folks, thank you very much. Glenn, ping me on LinkedIn or by email.
okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.